Well, hello there. It's me. It's Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi. It's music by John Williams. It's orchestrated by Herb Spencer. And this episode is 5M1, 6M1, Part 2, Luke and Ben, the original. Now, I kind of... there's a bit of discrepancy about the... about those numbers, 5M1, 6M1, that sort of thing. Because the orchestrator score says 5M1, 6M1, Part 2, but I think most people probably regard it as 6M1, except the next thing's, I think, 6M1. Anyway, I usually go into the thematic catalogue that Frank Lehman has done and sort of, use that, essentially, and then sort of, if it needs cross-referencing, which it doesn't usually, then I will. Anyway, I'm experimenting a little bit today with some transitions. So if I look away, that's because I'm kind of like doing that, and then sort of coming back to this. But I won't stay on my full face for very long because I think we just need to get into it. Let's just get into it. So we're in here, and the funny thing is that the actual film version basically doesn't start until kind of here, which, as you can see, is sort of halfway through bar 39. Yes, it's most of the cue is cut in the film, which is such a shame because the music is absolutely phenomenal. It's really, really good, and it's really interesting because it's something that you can kind of absorb a little bit more because it's quite slow. So there's none of this sort of really fast-paced stuff going on. It's a little bit more gestural and lyrical, I suppose you might say. Although I never really understand what that means. Lyrical, does that mean song-like, that you can add lyrics to it? I guess. Don't know. Anyway, so it's an interesting one. We start off with we just do that so we can get a sort of a little bit of a bigger page in here. I think also for this one, let's put a keyboard in just in case we need it. The problem with this is that you can't really see what's going on very, very clearly, unfortunately. So it's a bit of a problem. I'd originally made a complete boo-boo at the beginning, thinking that the viola part was in the viola clef, and of course it's actually written in the treble clef, which makes a lot more sense, where it's basically a B-flat minor chord, and then we also have a flat 6 and a sharp 11 and ninth as well. So essentially it is a subset of the Hungarian Minor. Now, if you need reminding about what a Hungarian Minor is and all of these sorts of things, they're all to be found in this list of set classes in this particular thing here, which is quite useful. And I think it's 722 is this thing, double harmonic scale, Hungarian minor scale. So the Hungarian minor scale is actually a mode of the double harmonic scale. And this is 722. So we can sort of go straight to these. It's much better hot links these days. So it's exactly the same as a harmonic minor, except the sharp 4. So you could even call it a harmonic Lydian if you wanted to, I suppose. There are all sorts of different names for these sorts of things. Let's have a look at double harmonic. So when you go into the modes, double harmonic major, Lydian sharp 2, sharp 6, ultra Phrygian, ridiculous, Hungarian gypsy minor, oriental, Ionian sharp 2, sharp 5, Locrian, double flat 3, double flat 7. So anyway, yes, sometimes they're not massively helpful, but we know that the Hungarian minor is one of the established modalities, let's call it, that John Williams uses throughout the franchise. A little bit more actually in The Empire Strikes Back, I've noticed, rather than this one. So this is a bit of an unusual one, but I suppose because he's on Dagobah, we saw that in the last film. So it's unsurprising, but it doesn't last long. It goes straight into Octatonic Harmony, and then it sort of all changes around. So let's have a little bit of a closer dive. In all of these things, really, we've got violin 1, violin 2 divided, and then we've got violas divided into 3. He tends to keep, interestingly enough, specific sort of triads separate from each other. It's just something that I've kind of tended to notice. So he doesn't sort of mix and match them particularly. Sometimes he does, but sometimes he doesn't. So in this one, you could kind of argue lots of different sorts of arrays of things. So in fact, unusually, this one is slightly mixed because this one is just that G flat major in first inversion. So that's the one, I'll put it in the right octave, in the violas. And then we've then got that sort of major seventh type sort of idea in the violins as well. So you get a really nice sort of fudging, I suppose, or smudging. I've heard commentators call Stravinsky's music sort of smudging effects when he has these rubs, I suppose you will call them as well. Jazzers would probably call them rubs. So what's really interesting about this is that all of that material is Hungarian minor. It's all from the same B-flat Hungarian minor, or whatever mode you like to call it, but basically that array of semitones and tones. But then we have oppositional harmonic elements to it. So in here, we've got a different sort of scale in the harp. And what I find amazing is how it sort of manages to fit in. So he has got the correct notes in terms of what's included in B-flat minor, but there's also other extra notes which are not included in that B-flat Hungarian minor, which I think is interesting, and especially in the Celeste, which is going to be sounding like that sort of idea. So we've got all sorts of interesting oppositional elements, and then even that, and it just sort of goes into this gestural mush of harmony. But it's amazing how it fits together so well. So I haven't actually analysed what these particularly are. I mean, this is, I guess, well, I've half done it. A B minor melodic. We don't know whether it's harmonic or melodic, but basically a sort of B minor type sort of thing, I suppose you could argue. Then we've also, just simply because it starts on G, but for no other reason, and that we have G there and G's going on as well. We've then got the harp, which is a really unusual scale. And actually one of the things that we can do is then put that into our little pitch class set calculator and go, okay, is there anything that kind of we are discovering that can usefully be drawn from this? And what's interesting about this particular bit is I think that is impossible because of the the extra note. So it could be that I've actually just got that completely wrong. So if you'll bear with, I'm going to kind of try to see whether I can solve it. I won't be able to show it on this screen, unfortunately. I'm going to have to quickly show it on the other screen. There we go. And just sort of kind of work behind the scenes, I'm afraid. So I'm sorry about that. But let's go into Luke and Ben. Yeah, it's sort of rather peculiar because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like 8 notes. But it can't be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I think it's just me being an idiot, really, and not being able to read Herb's writing, which can be very, very awkward. I think that's a D sharp. That's a C. That's then a B flat. That's an A flat. So I think then we got the right amount of notes, which again is really unusual. Yeah, because of that sort of, G, it's really weird. It's because of that G natural when we've already got a G flat in there as well. So it's, yeah, really, really peculiar. So after all of that, let's go back to the to this and start again. So here we go. So that's 726. So what does that tell us? I don't recall 726 as being anything like, you know, part of a sort of diatonic thing, you know, none of these sorts of things. And it isn't. So it's very much in opposition to what's going on. Is it a superset, a subset of something else? I've seen 827 a few times. That's an almost octatonic scale, not quite. 912 would be our third mode of limited transposition, which she does use occasionally, but I don't think it's quite right in this context. So I think that's a bit of a stretch with this one. But it's interesting that they do seem to be subsets. So I wondered that when therefore 6Z43, is that a subset of this non-atonic set? We'd need to reset and just go 6Z43, submit, and then try and find out whether it is or not. Actually, it is. So that's interesting that they share some sense of the same pitch organization. And that's sort of something which tells us that, you know, maybe it's not by design, it could just be complete fluke, just instinct, you know, composer's instinct. But it's interesting that it does kind of seem to add up, if you see what I mean. Really interesting. So, and it's one of those sort of very confusing areas of John Williams where you're kind of wondering, why is the harp bit different from the whole of the chord in something else? And why does that work? Part of it, I think, is to give even more added flavour to something, because, you know, otherwise he would never have polychords, which he clearly does. And the other thing is to make sure that it really sounds even more full than it already is, as well, filling up all those overtones and things as well. So we've got this sort of Lydian dominant type sort of idea, but then this sort of chromaticism right at the very, very end, and then like that. And it's really interesting, they must have added a bassoon in the session because that C sharp is not written down, and I just did all of that orally, basically, because it just wasn't really written. Then we have very low horns and tuba in this sort of chromatic gesture as well. It's a really interesting little bit of score, actually. And I'm hoping, if I do that, there we go, that we can just listen to that first little bit. Let's see whether I can sort of try and get that going and look at it. Yeah, it's all this sort of very gestural thing. It's really subtle. These little double bass pizzicatos. We've got consordini cellos as well, and all of this trem stuff going on. So that's the first little bit of it. And then we're into this sort of interesting Brahms style type of figuration. That's so common as to be virtually ubiquitous. And usually it's violin 1, and then the double stops are divided violin 2. So that's usually what goes on. So what's happening here? Well, we've got octatonic harmony in all of this bit. C, D flat, E flat, E, F sharp, G, A, B, which is transposition 0. In other words, it's untransposed. So in other words, all of these notes are drawn from that octatonic harmony. In fact, everything is. Particularly obvious in the Celeste part, if I just sort of isolate that just on the piano score. There we go, particularly in that second bar as well. And then we've got an interesting aug ninth chord, so an augmented chord with an added ninth, which is a really beautiful voicing with another E at the top. Very Ravellian. So then we basically accompanying that sort of clarinet solo, and all of this is sort of, these sort of gestural things. You can imagine him sort of playing the piano going, oh, that's rather beautiful, let's keep that. Lots of these pedal sounds, all to conjure up atmosphere. Then we're into this sort of descent. So it just changes here on this sort of B7 sharp 11 or sharp 4 with an E sharp chord. D7 flat 5. All of these really, really beautiful sort of added 9th, 7th chords, often with a sort of sharp or augmented flavour. In this case, diminished flavour, but I suppose you could also call it sharp 4 flavour. And then sort of interesting muted horns, which are basically sort of doing what the oboes and the cor anglais did as well. Again, becoming slightly more octatonic, this time a different transposition. So this is the octatonic T2. Like that, so transposed up 2 semitones, hence T2, transposed 2. And then we're into our G minor fourth theme with a really beautiful sort of a little triangle dingling going on as well, which is quite fun. Notice the bass changes. Now into G minor. Yeah, the triangle's a bit late on that one. Yeah, a little fragment of the another Q, 6M3, faking the code. Now C sharp minor sharp 4. Yeah, it's really interesting that sort of passes by, but it really is very discordant. If you play it at the piano, it's really interesting. So we've got this, you know, C sharp minor idea. But then our sharp 4, if I play all of this together, and I'm deliberately keeping the pedal on so we can hear all of those harmonies going on. Really, really quite discordant. But we've got the stability of the C sharp minor effect. So it's dissipated, and because the violins are very, very high up, again, it doesn't feel as discordant as it possibly is on the piano. Then we're into our sort of major 7th chord, C sharp minor 6. And then a really interesting chord here, B flat diminished, but with a major 7th. That sort of idea, which is coming up. More octatonicism. F sharp minor, force, delayed root here. Amazing. Goes into a completely different key at that bit. It's really, really extraordinary. So we're in F sharp minor. What? I mean, that's just mad. Let's just listen to it again. It's extraordinary. There's no preparation whatsoever. I mean, apart from simple voice leading, you know, apart from that. But even that, that C sharp isn't really resolved here because it's in a different part. So it's really extraordinary how it completely changes. And then we don't really get to hear the horns very much. They got these marked fibre mutes, which is always rather interesting when you see that in a score. So double harmonic, then an octatonic. Amazing piccolo. So you've got this extraordinary polychord. So we've got D sharp in the bass, or an E flat, I suppose you could say. We've also got an A minor So we've got that going on. So it's a sort of wrong note bass type sort of thing. But we've also got this going on with a sort of octatonic stuff. Half a double harmonic scale. Like that. But then a little bit of octatonicism as well. There's really, really extraordinary sort of chord complex. With this amazing two piccolos at the end. Which you don't really hear because they're such almost whistle tones, almost. Yeah. And it's almost, you know, the ear sort of slightly deceives, what, a B and an E natural with that as well. So it's really, really extraordinary. That's basically what's going on. And then suddenly we're into where the film cue actually begins, which is this Leia reveal. With a dominant pedal. Change of harmony just in... I can hear a Celeste here. But I'm not altogether sure. And I'm hearing another octave above that as well. So I wonder whether they added that in the session too. I'm hearing flutes an octave higher. I'm going to turn it up for myself. Could just be the Celeste an octave higher, actually. Famous little bit. Just going to stop it there. Sorry, and I will get to that bit. But it's just interesting to sort of see, yeah, maybe the Celeste is adding that extra octave and I'm sort of hearing an extra octave in there. Maybe that could be what's going on. Anyway, a very simple version of Leia's theme at that point. And then we're D minor 7, D minor with a nat 6, tam tam, suspended cymbal, and then da da dum, digga 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 da dum, which is sort of D minor. So we're into this last sort of 12/8 section, which I'll try and put all of it on one page. There we go. And that's it. In the film version, they basically repeat some of those bars. Yeah. But it's funny how it sort of suddenly segues completely into a sort of different, totally different bit. And we don't have any harp going on. It's just tam tam, suspended cymbal, big timpani, ba-ba-dum, digga 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 digga, but boom, another delayed root in D minor. Because it's not really obvious. And it's interestingly scored as well. So we've got trumpet 3, trumpet 1 and 2, that takes over. We've got trombone 1, and then the big sort of trombone 2, 3 tuba. We've got bass clarinet, clarinet bassoon, also doing that sort of pedal thing along with the double basses. And then sort of very light orchestrated stuff. So pizzicato violin 1, then arco violin 2. And then, you know, this sort of oscillating C and G strings on the viola at that point, which is interesting. Yeah, let's just sort of see whether we can sort of have a look at it. So all of the string bits, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, if we discount the first violins, actually, so the main sort of body of motor stuff is here. And that kind of supports the main melodic motive. And I will try to put that in now. So this is now with a pizzicato, which is just picking out the beginnings of those, you know, I'll call them triplets, but they're not, compound rhythms. Notice also how the xylophone just cuts out at the point where it needs to diminuendo, as well as the piano, because otherwise it becomes a bit too obvious. At the moment, they're just there for complete blend with the trumpets. Like that. And especially when combined with the pizzicato. Which I should have done. And then it's sort of more obvious where the bass comes in. We can sort of hear that already. Just there, and with a bit of timp for attack. Yeah, and actually really low tuba. Oh, really, really low at that point as well. So a nice little bit of scoring at that point as well. In fact, the whole thing is very delicately scored, actually. It's one of these sort of, you know, slightly sort of throwaway cues, which you could kind of ignore quite easily, but don't. Because I think it contains a lot of wealth of features that we see in Williams all the time. Those delayed roots, which I've mentioned, all of these are really interesting types of harmony content, all the voicing things that we get as well, and the really fantastic voiced chords as well, which sort of leave room for any soloistic elements to come through in the gaps where there are no notes, basically. And notice it's on a different timbre as well, different instrument. So hopefully you've enjoyed this one. I am going to go back to full pick mode. So there we go. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will bring the next few cues very soon, basically. Really looking forward to it. And there's a lot of music to get through. Just looking through all of these sort of, you know, there's huge amounts to come. So it's a bit daunting. I'm sort of, but we'll get through it. And then I will have a bit of a break from Return of the Jedi after I finished, and probably do some other little cues from other films, doing the same sort of deep dive, but just for different things, because I think, you know, lots of people requested that, so I will do that. But let's stick with this for the time being, and I'll move on to something at the end of the season. Anyway, it's been a great pleasure, and I shall see you very soon. Bye for now.